Hello YouTube, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm taking a look at this FREEWARE C-17. Now, it's a very early work in progress, and I want to make sure, before we get right into it, that I set your expectations right. Nowhere near study level, nowhere near payware level. It is simply just an add-on that a developer is working on for fun, basically in his spare time, as far as I can see. It's by no means perfect, but it can be a lot of fun, flown in the right conditions. With plenty of operators in the real world, it's quite likely your own air force or a kind of local air force to your country operates this aircraft. It is incredibly popular. Certainly is a unique aircraft that many air forces around the world basically love because it is so versatile. It's one of the jets that can basically take off from anywhere as long as there's a long enough amount of runway. And for this aircraft, it's certainly not as much as you'd think. It's in usage in many conflicts around the world, but also on humanitarian missions such as medical evacuations and letting supplies into areas that have been affected by natural disasters. But there's enough history behind this aircraft. It's very cool. Its first flight was in 1991, I believe, and there was 279 of them built. But enough history, let's get into this aircraft. Let's take a look at it and give you my thoughts on it. So welcome to the cockpit. You can see, yeah, it's not the best cockpit by any means. However, do not be fooled, it looks really good at night in my opinion. Now you'll notice at something I can really commend, bearing in mind this is a freeware project that the developer, who goes by the name of Destroyer121, is working on in his own time by the sounds of it. Something I like is the custom displays and indeed the custom autopilot panel. It reminds me very much, it kind of reminds me of the C-130 out of DCS, I can't lie. Although I think that one's slightly better textured, it hasn't got the quality that Microsoft Flight Sim has and brings over into this aircraft. You know, down here we've got this kind of I don't know what you'd call it actually, kind of delving into my brain there, but some sort of display that shows you your inputs. For example, my aileron inputs, or my roll, my pitch and elevators, and my yaw. Now I am on autopilot, so it hasn't actually disabled there quite magnificently. But you may have noticed I haven't got my flight director on, so all I need to do is come up to here and click that, bang, there it comes on. Now you might recognise that. If you've got a good eye, you'll see that's from the Boeing panels. It's basically the same as the 747, I believe. And, you know, it works pretty well. Moving down here into the cockpit, we've got their kind of equivalent of an FMC. But I believe this is actually used more for communication as opposed to inputting data. I might be wrong there, but it's just going off the buttons I see. We've got our throttle quadrant here, which is pretty, yeah, it's pretty poorly modelled. But you can see where they're going with it. It's quite an interesting shape in the real aircraft anyway. Followed by the parking brake, the flap lever. So yes, some of the buttons down here do actually work. Let's take a look at the overhead panel. Now, clearly a lot of work has been spent on here, and quite a bit of it does actually work, surprisingly. This is the most recently updated part, and it shows us what we've got to come with this aircraft. It looks rather good. Yes, it's a bit plain in areas, but certainly, you know, effort has been paid. I'm not going to lie to you and say the cockpit looks great, or even looks good, but it's a good start. Freeware product, and someone that's working on an aircraft that we haven't really got in Microsoft Flight Sim yet. Military aircraft are always quite difficult to work on, so you have to commend him for that. Certainly better than anything I could do. So before we swap over to our approach at Ryzen Autumn, let's head over to the menu to take a look at some of the liveries you get. As you can see, I mean, external model, we've looked at it quite a bit already, and it's decent. The external model is probably quite a redeeming factor here. Not that it needs to be redeemed, it's a decent enough aircraft. But it looks pretty good. Only thing I would say is that the engines, they look a bit funny, and also I don't know if you can notice at the front of the aircraft where it kind of morphs up. Well, it looks a bit funky around there, a bit poorly modelled. Okay, so here we are on the menu. We're setting up our approach to Ryzen Autumn, which will give me plenty of time to talk about the flight model as well. You get plenty of liveries with this aircraft, which is always quite a nice touch, mostly in the US Air Force, but also ones which stand out, such as Etihad one, which is pretty cool, as well as Royal Australian Air Force, NATO, and a few others. Canadian Air Force as well as the RAF. But let's load in now. We'll talk about flight model as we're coming down. Okay, welcome onto our approach into Ryzen Autumn. We'll get the gear down now. As you can see, it comes down. Animations are really nice on that, in my opinion, but we'll have to see them when I'm not focusing on landing. Now, something that does bug me quite a bit is the heads-up display not working. It would be really helpful right now, especially in this cockpit, because it is rather difficult to get a view of the runway. Flight model on the whole, well, it's a bit funny. Sometimes it feels really good, sometimes it feels really bad. Of course, I've got no flight experience in the C-17, obviously, nor in any aircraft like it, so my opinion on it's always going to be based off other flight sim knowledge. It feels quite similar to the 747, just kind of scaled down a bit, I guess. We are very high, but this aircraft is made for these kind of things. My flaps also don't seem to be working, which is pretty interesting. Oh, this is not going to be a good landing. I'm not losing speed, and I can't get flaps down. There we go, we're down. That was a horrible landing, but nonetheless, be interesting to watch on the replay. I do quite enjoy the model from outside. It looks a bit unrealistic, a bit too clean, but if you put a dirty livery on it, it would look good. Now look at the gears coming out here now. Look how they come out. The animation on them is superb. The tilted gear, they rotate when they come out. It looks great. As the aircraft descends down, you might notice a bit of the vapour trails right there. I think that's an issue, and that shows that it's been ported over from the 747 because that's kind of closer to where the 747 would be, I'd imagine, in terms of the vapour trails. So I suspect that's where it's come from. Is it worth it? Well, you're not paying anything, so it's always going to be worth it somewhat. It's certainly an interesting aircraft. Feels quite nice, fun to fly. You can push it to the limits, go land in the deserts, whatever. You know, stuff like that. Even try it on the beaches. I know they do that. That might be the C-17 actually, so correct me there if I'm wrong. But you can push this to the limit. And here we come for the landing. Let's zoom out a bit. Ooh. Yeah, that was rough, but yeah, no, decent landing. Very quick, but completely off centre. So there we have it, guys. You know, it's an interesting aircraft. Flaps there as well, looking pretty nice. Notice reverses came out for a bit there as well. They do work. Before we wrap up, there's a bit more I want to show you. It won't take too long, 1 or 2 minutes. I brought us here over to California to try some low-level flying before we hop over to Ryzen Autumn, or back to Ryzen Autumn, I should say. You can see landing and flight model is pretty interesting, but when it works, it does feel quite good. And you know, look at it, it looks very cool. Now, something I'm going to do quite briefly is swap over to nighttime, just to show you the cockpit. I'm going to completely lose my footing and where I am, but just look at it, I think it looks pretty decent. It's not perfect by any means, but it looks pretty nice. It looks better than how it looks in daytime, definitely. Now let's do something this aircraft can also do as well. Let's try a gravel landing. Now we've basically got this entire plain or desert, can't really work out what it is, over here. So let's try land here. Bring that gear down now. We'll get some flaps down. They are actually working, funnily enough, today. Now the thing I find about this aircraft is that it's quite nose heavy flight model wise. So I do find myself having to push down quite a bit or pull up in order to avoid any kind of incidents. Going right past that hill, and now we've got this entire area to have a shot at landing. Okay, let's try landing now. We were getting close to the hill. We are quite fast, but I think I left auto throttle on, but we've got plenty of time to lose it. And let's try about now. There we go, touchdown. Oh, bit of a bounce, but it looks fit. Oh, goodness me. Nonetheless, we're down. Certainly an interesting aircraft. Autopilot works okay. It's not the best. It's definitely not the worst in terms of freeware aircraft. It's kind of your basic speed, heading, and altitude. That's really all to it. I believe you can manage an ILS landing in this somehow, but I'm yet to try it. Let's put some brakes on now. And of course, something I'm big missing that I just noticed is that we've got no rudder pedals. That seems like a bit of an issue there. It's clear to see that they haven't really worked on this area as much as they probably should have before working on stuff like the overhead panel, which I think is pretty good. Overall, well, you know, it's hit and miss here and there. It's fun to fly, but definitely not perfect. Bit of a fun video, just taking a look at what is, I think, a pretty cool aircraft. If they put some work into it, it could be very good, it could be very fun, but there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. I'd like to wish you all a great day. Thank you so much to my first class channel members. Thank you to Captain Matt Russell, Jesse Wiseman, Ethan Bubeck, Simon Schmidt, Sirifra, Jonathan Desmond, Erwin K, hello, Fanny Leibenberg, and Maxim LaBelle. You guys really do help me out, but of course you just watching this video is always enough. It's decent, it's nice to have fun in, but there's a lot of shortcomings. But at the end of the day, congratulations to the developer. What you're working on here could be something very special. Just giving you my thoughts, but there we have it guys. I'll see you around. Bye bye.